So, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker came out a week ago, more than a week ago, and it's come out to less than favorable reviews by critics, by audiences, and it wasn't the response Disney had hoped for. Surely things change, over time, but the most general reaction to this movie was that it wasn't that good. And me personally, I went into it with an open mind, and sad to say, I came out, a bit disappointed with how they tied everything up, if like you can call it tying everything up. But that's what inspired me to make this review because every I like to think every movie has an upside. It tried something new or tried something unique, and we're gonna see if we can find that today. So the way I want to organize this review is first talk about what I thought about the movie, how I felt about it, some of the gripes I had with it, and then trying to discuss the upsides to the movie, and then closing off with how it could be improved, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's jump on into this. So what did I think of the movie? In my personal opinion, it was very poorly paced. There were jump cuts, you know, basically everywhere. Like, how I'm trying to describe it is that you would be in one scene, for example. I'm trying not to give spoilers. You'd be in one scene, and then it would quickly just jump to a different scene, with little to no context. And at times it would work, but in a story-driven movie like Star Wars, you need a flow of some sort. When you had jump cuts in, for example, A New Hope, when they were all on the Death Star, you can it makes sense why they would make rapid jump cuts to different characters because they're all in the same place, focusing on one goal. And even if you didn't see those characters at that moment, they were all either interacting with one another or talking to each other. Like Luke in the trash compactor, communicating with C-3PO in that room with the control room, if that makes sense. Now, before I start with this, with another gripe I had, I'm no writer by any means. When I had to write essays for school, a lot of times I just bullshit my way through. If the topic interests me, pues I would look up and find information and write something good. But if it's something they give you just to make you shut up, which happened a lot, not with me, but in my class, you get good at just writing to fill up a page. And no offense to the writers or the directors or anybody who produced this movie, but the writing was really shitty, in my opinion. The writing in the whole trilogy has been off for me because you have so many threads, so many plot points that you can go off of. It just that ruined my fucking notification. It ruins so many characters. Well, not ruin per se, but it underutilizes many characters. The biggest example, in my opinion, would be Finn. He's introduced as this rogue stormtrooper. He might have force sensitivity, and he's built up to be this, amazing hero with a great arc and this and that in The Force Awakens. And in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, he's very underutilized. His character barely develops. It's a not a meme, but a lot of people are saying on Twitter that all he did in The Rise of Skywalker was scream for Rey, and you got to be honest, that was basically what he did in the Rise of Skywalker. Now, things they could have done with Finn, they could have explored, his possible Force attunement. They could have made him, a symbol for other like-minded stormtroopers, because all of the First Order stormtroopers were stolen as kids. They could have done so much with Finn, and John Boyega, the actor who plays Finn, he has such a dynamic range of how he can act, what he can say, and what he can do. if you've seen him like in different videos and podcasts, he's a super charismatic guy, and it sucks to see that J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson failed to utilize his natural charisma to further Finn's character. And another example, it would have to be Rey, because the main argument I see against her is that she's a Mary Sue. You know, she never struggles. She basically picks up whatever she wants and she'll learn it right away. And I hate to agree, but yeah, I really don't hate to agree. You know, I agree 100% she is a Mary Sue. Because part of what made Luke from the original trilogy so relatable was that he went through struggle. You know, in the beginning, he's ambitious to leave Tatooine, ambitious to fight the Empire, or at least join the rebellion. But you know, he's held back by his aunt and uncle. And then he finds Ben Kenobi. Even in that pursuit of finding Ben Kenobi alone, it shows he's very flawed. He's very headstrong. He'll dive into a situation that he hasn't planned for. You know, that's how he gets attacked by Tuskens. And even afterwards, you know, he loses his aunt and uncle, which is already something, you know, Rey hasn't experienced. She's only lost her parents, but when she was very young, and that's about the closest they can come to. And you see in The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, he still struggles, you know, between the light and the dark. You know, after he finds out Vader is his father, he's determined to bring him back. After, you know, confronting the Emperor, you know, he's almost seduced to the dark side, but he finds the light in himself and his father. Now I know I just jumped the movie, but in Empire Strikes Back, you can see him struggle to learn the Force. That's what that whole scene on Dagobah was about, him learning the Force, learning how to utilize it, how to let it flow through him from Yoda. And that level of rise and fall and struggle, you know, it humanizes the character and lets us relate to it. And with Rey, with me personally, I saw very little to connect to her, if that makes any sense. And you know, one of the biggest gripes I've had with it is that the unnecessary inclusion of the Emperor, because it came from George Lucas himself. He would have never brought the Emperor back, because I believe, and I think I would like to say he believes as well, but I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I believe it undermines Vader's sacrifice and his redemption, because, you know, I grew up with the prequels, and then I watched the originals, and then I watched the sequels. You know, like when you grow up with seeing 1, 2, and 3, you see how vulnerable and malleable Anakin was in the prequels, and you know, the Jedi, you know, failed to get to him, like to get through to him that, you know, things are gonna be alright, you know, your wife's not gonna die, this and that. But you see, you know, him being seduced by Palpatine, you know his fate, and you just can't help but pop my fingers. You can't help but feel bad for him. And even more in the Clone Wars TV show, it humanizes him even more. You know, George Lucas may have not been the best writer in terms of dialogue, but you know, he made interesting characters, and Anakin, I think, was one of the most interesting. You know, because he dabbles in the light and the dark. He's confused. He's conflicted. He wants to just save everyone when he can, and when he can't, his emotion take over. Just from, you know, his loss of his mother to Tuskens, and you can, you know, you feel a sense of, you know, not accomplishment, but a sense of like pride. You know, you're proud of when Vader finds the good in him, or when Luke finds the good in Vader, and he just, you know, yeets the Emperor off the fucking ledge. And with the rise of Skywalker and bringing him back, you know, it just kind of undermines that whole arc Vader had, in my opinion. But you know, that's all my opinion. I'm up for discussion if you want to talk about it. And let's move on to the next section.
Okay, so in this section, I'm going to talk about what I thought could be improved on the movie, and basically I summed it down to these three main points, which would be minding the little things, and I'll get into that in a second. Better utilize the characters you have, and finally, respect the or leave the previous characters alone, I guess. And basically, the main focus on that part is changing the Emperor back to Snoke, and the reason being is because, as I said before, it would undermine Anakin's redemption, and it just seemed like not a poor choice, but like a choice to try and draw back the people they lost in the Last Jedi. Because let's be honest, in the Force Awakens, Snoke had a pretty good. Well, I thought Snoke had a pretty good introduction. He was this silent figure that worked behind the scenes. He somehow seduced Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, and they could have gone so much with that. So they could have done so much with that because they barely released comics explaining his backstory, but I feel like they could have gone into why he's doing this, who he is first and foremost, and just expanded upon it, going off of the Force Awakens. But in the Rise of Skywalker, not in the Rise of Skywalker, I'm sorry, in the Last Jedi, Ryan Johnson made the stupidest decision, in my opinion, of killing him off because, yeah, you have Kylo Ren as the now supreme leader of the First Order, but you just brought in a character and then you just immediately get rid of him as soon as you introduced him, when there was so much that could have been done, and take it like this. Even let's say he had to die. Snoke, no matter what, he was gonna die. Okay, in the Last Jedi, you could have added some parts or some scenes, explaining who he is and why he's there, why he's doing the things he's doing. But instead, they just leave us in the dark. That's my biggest concern and my biggest problem with not only the Rise of Skywalker but the Last Jedi too, because I genuinely liked the character of Snoke. I thought he was interesting, but they did nothing with it. Now, what do I mean by going on to the little things? The little things are what matter most. Not in every scenario, but they do matter to a degree. And if you can get the little things right, you make quite a few people happy. And what I mean by this is, obviously there's scenes in the Rise of Skywalker where Rey hears, they call it the ghost of Jedi Past, I believe they call it. And they hear different people like Ahsoka, they hear Mace Windu, they hear somehow Kit Fisto, they hear a bunch of people. And my question is, how did all of those Jedi learn to not become Force ghosts, but to just commune with the Force? Like, that becoming a Force ghost or even becoming one with the Force is a method, it's a technique that was taught to Qui-Gon Jinn by the Willows, I think they're called. And they're just like this, basically the angels that Anakin was talking about in episode 1. But you have the Willows teaching Qui-Gon how to do it, but they didn't fully teach him. That's why he's only a voice. And then you have Qui-Gon teach Yoda, and then Yoda fully masters it. I'm stuttering. Yoda fully masters it, so that's how he can become a ghost. And then he teaches it to Obi-Wan, and that's why he can become a ghost. But where in that time frame could it have been taught to Mace Windu, Ahsoka, or any of the Jedi mentioned of Jedi Past? Now it could be the Force acting on it, like the Force doing it itself, that sort of thing. But to me, it just seems out of place. Like, not everybody knows the rules of like being a Force ghost, but like those are like the basics. This guy learned it, and then he taught this guy, and then he taught this guy, and that was basically it. He taught it to Luke, and I'm assuming Luke taught it to Leia, but none of it is explained. It just happens. And I don't mind things just happening, but things within reason should happen. You know, if that makes any sense. Again, this is all my opinion on how I could maybe improve the movie or the trilogy as a whole. Now, the final point I want to hit on before the end of this video is that the characters, not only in this movie but this whole trilogy, have been underutilized. They've been heavily underutilized. You know, you have Finn, they could have done so much with him. Snoke, they could have done so much with him. Rey, they could have done so much with. You know, they could have improved the characters, because people often see those characters as the worst, even though the actors and actresses are amazing. They could have done so much with their characters. They could have done so much with even Rose and Poe. They could have done so much. Like I said, with Finn and the Stormtrooper, and, you know, appealing to the other Stormtroopers, they could have had Rey, you know, gone through trial and error, struggle to become the great Jedi she is. They could have elaborated on Snoke's backstory. They could have wrote Rose better, you know. And Poe, you know, he's a decent character in my opinion. I didn't have much trouble with him. They could have improved some things, but that's basically the gist of what I'm trying to get at. Now, that's gonna sum up my Rise of Skywalker review, and, you know, I hope you guys found something insightful. You liked it, and if you did, you know, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know how I can improve, what you disagree on, what you agree on, if you learned anything. And, well, it's New Year's that I'm finishing this video, so if I'm uploading it before, then Happy New Year's, and if I'm uploading it after, Happy New Year's, and you all take it easy. Peace.